Hello and welcome along to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ed McKnight.
And I'm Andrew Nicol.
And today on the show, we're talking about what if you want to buy your first home or an owner-occupier and it's currently got tenants in it. Now, this has come from long-time listener of the show, Sam, who says, I've been listening for a while and a huge fan. I've got a question or idea for you guys to talk about on the show about buying property as an owner-occupier, but the property has tenants living there. So, is it a case-by-case situation? Can I negotiate to settle the property vacant? Or is it, if the tenants are on a year-long lease, do you have to wait for that time to run out? And then, how does the bank work with all this? How does it work with getting a loan? Can I buy the property with a 20% deposit, even though it's still got tenants in it? Or what's the story here? So, Sam, we're going to answer this today. It's a great question. And let me start off by asking you this, Andrew. If you settle the property with tenants in it, how is the bank going to treat this? What's the deposit required?
Yeah, so this is the challenge. So if you go into the bank and you've got your sale and purchase agreement, down the bottom of normally page 1, it'll say if there's any tenancies. And if there is a tenancy, then it's an investment property. Even if it's going to be an investment property for a day, it's an investment property, you need to have a 40% deposit, which will probably eliminate most people thinking about doing this. So it becomes a real challenge, and because the tenants being there at possession is what determines if it's an investment property and an owner-occupied. And actually, just before I let you carry on, Ed, one question that came to mind, hopefully this isn't later on in my notes, and I've just missed it. What would happen around Brightline? Because if you had it tenanted for, say, 6 months, so say you had 50% deposit, didn't matter. You said, I'm just going to carry on living there. I'll settle it, and then I'll move in there. They're there for 6 months. You move in to the property for a period of time. Is that going to later trigger Brightline, and how would you establish what the Brightline amount was?
Well, actually, that's a very good question, Andrew. Well, before the
change, it wouldn't matter. But after the date, and I guess we don't know, maybe this is something that's going to come out, but technically you've had it as an investment property for a period of time, so therefore it would be recorded with the IRD, so possibly there would be a challenge there, but we don't know, right?
Well, no, the issue is that there is a 12-month grace period, but the 12-month grace period, I believe, is at the end of before you sell it, rather than at the start of it.
Right.
So what they would do is they would pro-rata the Brightline. So I'm not sure whether the 12-month grace period applies at the start, but you always ask the tax questions at the start.
It's just so good. I just love it when I catch you out and you don't know the answer to it. Normally you just make it up. Whenever it's something to do with economics, you just give me an answer, just make it up and pretend like you know. Okay, so Ed, here's maybe a question you will know the answer to for once. What's the story with the tenant? What's the story with the tenant then? Can the landlord move them out early?
Well, it depends whether it's fixed term or periodic. And by the sounds of it, looks like that this one in Sam's case is going to be fixed term. So you will need to wait until that term is over, till that fixed term is up, before you can then give notice to the tenants and ask them to then move out. Now, two things can happen at the end of that fixed term. The tenants can either decide to willingly move out, or under the new Residential Tenancies Act, that tenancy will automatically convert over to a periodic, at which point you can then give a 90-day written notice for the tenants to vacate that property. But that becomes a bit of an issue, even if it is periodic actually, that becomes a bit of an issue for owner-occupiers who want to move in. Well, why is that? Because even if you negotiate the contract and within that you negotiate vacant possession, there's still a 90-day window where there's still going to be tenants in that property, or your ability to move into that house is going to be significantly delayed. So that probably leaves you wondering, well, what are my options around these tenants?
If you can't just have their tenancy ended, probably what I would do as a seller, and actually, interestingly enough, my mother-in-law who works in the property management team has got this at the moment. So she inherited from her mother 2 units side by side. One of them is vacant, the other one has got a tenant in there. And so she was trying to figure out when to market these things. And my advice was, don't market them while there's a tenant in there, because you restrict your pool of purchases by such a great amount that I think, now you'd probably want to have them both vacant. So what I've told her to do, go and knock on the door. offer to pay for the people's moving costs or give them a bit of money, pay for their moving costs, and they're actually renting it furnished. Now, the furniture is going to go to the dump anyway. So I said to her, tell them they can have whatever furniture they want and pay for their removal costs, and then they can go and find something out, because that way they're not going to be disadvantaged, and in fact they'll get all the benefit of the furniture. However, this can sometimes go wrong as well. So one of my other friends was selling off some of his units. He offered the tenants $2,000 to leave, and at the last minute they couldn't find anywhere. And so they said, okay, we're not interested. And then he got charged penalty interest for not being able to sell the property because he was selling it vacant in possession. That's what it said on the contract. So you've just got to be a little bit careful on this. Now, that's completely legal. You can do this. They can decide to end that tenancy early on the basis that you come to a mutual agreement, get it in writing. That was probably something that my friend had missed on that process. And I guess you're wondering who should pay this. You know, the buyer's getting the benefit of the vacant possession, but the vendor's probably the one that wants to sell the property. So probably in my mind, the vendor, the person selling the property, is the person that would pay that extra cost. One thing that I've done in the past is when negotiating this, if I want it to be vacant because I want to live there, I mean, that's not been the case for me ever, but if I wanted it for renovations or something like that, what I would do would just have a delayed settlement. So you go unconditional, you pay your deposit, but then your settlement is in 6 months' time when you know the tenants are going to be gone. So that could be another option if the person selling the property doesn't need the money straight away. And the great thing is, you know, if in a market like this where, you know, things seem to be going up, you might make some extra money in that 6 months' time without actually having paid for the property. So Ed, tell me this. Should you just settle this property as an investment property and then give notice to the tenants?
Well, there's two ways to look at it. I mean, the first thing is, this is assuming that you've got the money to be able to do this. And if you're an owner-occupier, you've probably budgeted on the fact that, hey, I'm going to need a 20% deposit. But if you've been in the market for a while, maybe there's a chance that you've got enough money to settle this as an investment property. And there are two ways to look at it. Look, the first thing is, as the upside, you're going to get some rent in the meantime, right? Because you're still going to have tenants in there for potentially 90 days or 60 days, depending on when notice has been given to them. And up until that point, you get some rent. But there are some downsides. A, obviously, you don't get that house straight away compared to if you were to go out and purchase a different property that didn't have tenants in it. And I think the other thing that most people probably wouldn't think about is, in the meantime, you're the one who's got the liability of what the tenants do to that house while you're their landlord. So you didn't choose these tenants. You didn't decide whether they're going to be in the place or not. I mean, maybe they've been looking after it and that's why you therefore want to purchase this property. You probably don't want to purchase a property for your family to live in if it's in a complete state of disrepair. But you don't have any guarantee of what the condition of that property is going to be like once you eventually move in, compared to if the vendor is the one who owns the property up until the point you take possession and then the tenants move out. You know, they've got to guarantee the condition is basically as you saw it, because you're going to do a pre-settlement inspection before you go and settle the house. You agree with that, Andrew?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But one thing that I'd be thinking about if I were buying this property is, how about I use this to my advantage and try and negotiate a better deal? So if you are buying something that's got tenants in there, obviously, anyone that listens to the show will know that there's serious tax implications now with buying a property as a rental that is existing. And so the advice that I give people is, if you've got a property right now with a tenant in there, wait till that tenancy expires, because there's just fewer people interested in buying a property with tenants. And that might mean that you could get this property at a good price, because if anyone listens to the show, walks into the open home and goes, oh, it's already tenanted, this is going to be a rental property, it's not a good return on investment, I'm going to go buy something new or something that's exempt. And so, again, I think that pool of people that are buying existing rentals is going to get smaller and smaller. Also, if you can negotiate that delayed settlement, you get a good price and you get a delayed settlement, that's a win-win. This does beg the question, why would people sell a property with tenants when they could give them notice and get more money? Well, there's a few things. Number one, maybe they're just not as clued up as the listeners of the show on real estate. And actually, I think also another part to that is right now, while stock is hard to get or inventory is low, real estate agents And I know this happens because I heard my friend say this the other day. He said, oh, it won't be a problem. Now, my gut says it probably will be a challenge selling a property with a tenant, but they want to get the listing. They want to get it on the market. So they're more likely to say, don't worry about it, and then see if they can get a result that you're happy with. But it might disadvantage that sale price. Or you might have a really motivated vendor who needs to settle quickly and they can't afford to wait the 90 days or till the end of the tenancy. And they might not want the income that they're going to get from the tenants up till settlement might not be of interest because they're more cash constrained. So these are good negotiating points. But I think the key thing I do here is I talk to the real estate agent and I'd say, hey, why are they selling it? Because you might find out that they're moving overseas and they want the cash. You might also find out, like in Helen's example, they've just got these properties there that aren't really what they want anymore. So they can wait if they have to. But, having the money is quite good. Often what I would also do, if I wanted to get a delayed settlement, but I knew they needed some cash now, I'll just pay a higher deposit. Now, if you've got 10% deposit because you're a first home buyer, and you need you need to sweeten that a little bit. You need to offer them, say, $200,000. What you might find is if there's a relatively short period, the bank might actually give you an unsecured loan for that increased deposit, potentially. Or you might be able to do that against other properties. And then I would pay, or if you've got the cash, then great, just do it. Pay a little bit extra cash so that they know that they've got that deposit, they'll get access to it, and then everyone wins and you get a better price.
Okay, well, let's wrap it up there, but please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It really does help us get the message out to more people. And make sure you tune in tomorrow because we're going to be talking about different types of townhouses, apartments, and family homes that you can potentially purchase. We're going to go through all the lingo. It's going to be fantastic. And also make sure you check out our updated epic guide to property investment. Now, this used to be our 16,000 word guide about everything you need to know if you're just starting out in property investment. It's now turned into about a 22,000 word guide telling you everything you need to know. I'm going to drop a link to that in the show notes, so tap or swipe over the cover art. Links in there. Or just Google property investment, and once you scroll past the ads, it's usually one of the top things on the page. So make sure you check that out. Thanks for listening to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ed McKnight.
And I'm Andrew Nicol.
And we're going to be back again tomorrow with even more daily strategies, tactics and insights to help you get the most out of the New Zealand property market. Until next time.